Hello, welcome to edition 2 of Earnest Prattle. And I hear you cry, what's Earnest Prattle? Well, it's me, Paul Wardle, in conversation. And this is just my little corner, my little enclave of joy. And today I've got a really special person to introduce to you. But before I go on to that, I need to ask a little favour, please. If you should be so kind, would you please press the like button? And if you enjoyed today's content, would you also click subscribe? I'd really appreciate it. Thank you very much. And like I say, today we've got a really special person. I'm really proud to, call him a friend. I met this guy about 6 months ago, and he's a world famous photographer who's been doing his trade for near on 40 years and has taken the pictures of lots of celebrities from all over the world. So there really is one and only Alistair Morrison. So let me bring Alistair Morrison into the conversation. Hello, Alistair.
Paul, how are you, brother?
I'm very well, thank you, brother. You beat me to it, Alistair.
Good to see you.
It's absolutely amazing to see you too, Alistair. I was saying in the intro how I think we have, got a really good relationship, and we're more like best friends and brothers now than anything else.
Well, we are best friends who've never actually met.
Correct.
Which is interesting, isn't it? How you can you can bond in a way which is from a distance. And do you know why, Paul? Do you know why?
Go on, Alistair.
Because I know that you're a decent bloke just by looking at you.
No, thank you very much.
That's all right. I can send you a compliment. I've told you that before. But
well, all those pre-prepared insults out of you, so I'll leave them off now.
But come on now. I enjoy those pre-prepared, the old posh stuff.
Oh, the posh stuff, yes.
Yeah.
Well, Are you still recording the Made in Chelsea senior edition?
Yeah, absolutely. The senior boy.
That's fantastic, Alistair.
It's me, and who else would be in the senior edition of Made in... Actually, that's a good idea.
It is a good idea.
Should we do that?
We should do that, Alistair. That's absolutely a fantastic idea.
What would be the equivalent there?
No, my only problem is, Alistair, I don't know many posh people.
You know me. Now listen, let's talk about this. All right, let's talk about this, because I think it's really important that people don't misunderstand this.
Go on.
So right from the start, we kind of opened up about who we were, right?
Yeah.
And we said to each other, okay, so what do you think of me then? And you kind of said, well, you're a bit posh. And I said, yeah, and I don't take that as with any offense. I actually, probably because of my voice and everything, but I'm not really posh. I mean, if you wanted posh, you'd go really posh.
Well, your voice is velvety, Alistair. Smooth.
Darling.
Yes, we
are. You say it all the time. It's nice of you to say so, but the reality is that we do have this kind of funny old thing in this country, don't we, of north and south and everything, and we shouldn't, because actually we're all in the same bloody British boat.
Yes.
And we're an island, and we should all love each other more and be interested in each other and find something around what we all do. And you've said to me things like you feel somehow more cultured because you've now talked to me about photography and all sorts of things. And I think, but actually, Paul, you've always been that. You've always had that inside.
Was that in between when you said I was common as milk?
Yeah, well, yeah, a little bit. But, that was only because you were insistent on the posh bit. So I just decided that we'd go common on you.
It's a term of endearment, Alice. It's because I like you. That's why. I mean...
Exactly. But that's the whole point. That's the whole point, is that it's a term of endearment. We're saying it to each other because actually what we're saying is you know, we can take it. We're all right. We're okay. We can be honest with each other. We can say things which can bring a laugh out, as long as it's got a smile. As long as it's not a dig or something, then that's
Correct.
absolutely fine. And it's a little bit like we all have to be politically. I can't even say it. Politically correct now, don't we?
We do these days.
Yeah, and fair enough. But at the same time, we can't be popped into a corner of, you know, don't say what you're feeling and saying what you mean and being honest is really important.
I think if you know your audience, you can say what you like to a certain degree.
Well, to a certain extent. And my audience now, I mean, I know that you always say that I'm a world famous photographer. As far as I'm concerned, my audience is either Moz fans or Nottingham fans, because you brought more people to my table from your Facebook than I've had worldwide ever.
Well, you know, you're not quite on my par yet, Alistair, but you're certainly getting there.
I'll never be on your par, mate. You'll always be one step ahead of me.
Shall we discuss how we actually came across each other, Alistair?
Yeah, let's do that. So, shall I? I'll tell you. I'll remind you.
Yeah, you remind me how we did that, Alistair, please.
Yeah. Well, I am still doing this Time to Pause project where I've got 1,000 people to come and be photographed during COVID, during their own isolation, on my computer, on this kind of new.
In your attic, as you put it.
In my attic. Here I am, still in my attic, and you came on, and I don't think you'll mind me saying, but you were a bit teary, and you were not a bit lonely, you were depressed and very lonely.
Absolutely, yeah, I'll go with that.
You said to me 6 weeks without talking to anybody, and you'd heard me on the Julie Hamill radio show, and you thought you'd come and just see what it was all about, really. Yeah. And then by the end of that conversation, I said to you, well, Paul, let's chat again in 2 days' time. And we did. And then we did it again. And then we did it again. And then I was really, really fascinated by the way that you were able to kind of say to me, right from the start of any conversation, how you were feeling and how honest you were about it. And how you then introduced me to your family. So I've met your mum, I've met Paul Jr., I've met your brother, all at a time when we came out of COVID, and then you brought them around to the house and I saw them still on this Zoom. So I haven't really met them at all. I've just seen them. And then you started to tell me all about your past and, good and bad, but actually very honest. And also about your dad and his coal mining and all sorts of things which kind of really bonded me to you because of the honesty of what you said to me. And in that time, we did some strange old things. We did some exercise classes.
I was going to mention that, the exercise.
Yeah. With I think. You called Jenny the Sergeant Major at the end.
I certainly did, yes.
She was pushing your boundaries a little bit too much.
Yes, just a tad.
Yeah, I got you onto vegan for a bit, which you kind of stuck to a certain extent, but you can't help yourself when Paul Jr. comes around with a McDonald's. Well,
it's a gradual thing, Alistair. It's a big change going vegan. So a lot of my food is now vegan or vegetarian. So
listen, and I only ever said that to you because I said, listen, at the end of the day, what it had helped me with was a clearer mind. And there were times when you came on when I could see, in fact, there were a couple of times where you didn't come on with an excuse and I knew that you weren't feeling so good.
No.
But then you began to come on when you weren't feeling so good. And do you remember that conversation we had when I try to get away the demons, and we put a name to this other part of Paul.
Yeah, Wayne.
Wayne. And you know, sometimes I would come on and I'd say, is it Wayne today, Paul? And you'd go, yeah, you know. And there was one really honest conversation where you just said to me, and actually it's in the documentary, where you said, I'm, you know, you won't understand, Alistair. Some days I just can't talk to anybody.
Black Dog days.
Yeah. And what you potentially didn't realize was that you weren't the only one, Paul.
No.
And from that, you began to understand that there are so many people out there in really different circumstances. Some people who are well off in the country, in houses they don't need to work.
Through the Time to Pause project, Alistair, you've introduced me to the plights of lots of people that are in dire circumstances that are far worse than anything I have to worry about. People living under bridges, and people that don't know where the next meal's coming from, and people who are dealing with the COVID situation with no hope whatsoever, because they can't segregate, because they can't get, there's nowhere to go.
Well, they've got no homes to go to.
They've got no homes to go to.
Exactly. But that doesn't make your situation any worse, or the you know, the guys who've got everything any worse, because ultimately we're just all human beings, and we are. What I found, especially with some of those mums that we met, you know, in Bangladesh, was that they had, because they had virtually nothing, their focus was so much on their children that their strength was more acute than some people that I've met that have everything.
Absolutely.
who can't cope with a different set of life. And it's true of humanity, really. And it's true that we should kind of all understand that we are in different circumstances, but at the same time, we are all flesh and blood, and we all have good moments, bad moments. But ultimately, what we need is each other, and we need to, it's like at the end of my films, we need to stay listening, stay caring, and above all, stay well. And what I mean by that is stay mentally well, because
that's all we need, Alistair.
Yeah,
I mean,
if you feel good, you're going to feel more engaged with other people.
I can't understate your contribution to my recovery to get to the point I am now. I'm nowhere near better, but I'm in a lot better place through talking to you, Alistair.
I always thank you for saying that, Paul, but I always remind you that I'm in a better place.
It's your fault, Alistair.
Well, yeah, it is my fault.
My listeners have got you to thank for my new vlog, because you gave me the confidence to go ahead and do this. So it's going to be a learning curve for me. I'll hopefully get better at it as we go along.
Listen, mate, you're already getting more views than I am. So I'm you know, your competition now.
Well, that's not the competition, because what I was going to say, while I was mentioning the Time to Pause project, I will pop up a link to your Time to Pause YouTube channel and your Instagram page at the end of the video, so people can pop it and have a look at, because there's some really poignant, emotional videos that you've included on there, including a not so poignant video, which we like to call Talking Cobblers, which is
well, actually, you know, you say that. Yeah, I mean, the very first one was very hard hitting. I got the medics and nurses from around the world to talk about, and we had a kind of a live going through a COVID ward in Calcutta. So it's, you know, kind of like really, if you thought that COVID wasn't existing, it's existing in a very big way. But actually, the one that we did, Talking Cobblers, and we'll do more of them, because I really enjoy those, because that's about us all. That's about the fact that we're stuck in homes. You know, we're in lockdown again now. We have to cope with our own solitude. We have to cope with who we are for a second time, really. I mean, we never really got out of it. I mean, if you think about it, but at the same time, we found ways of coping with it. And interestingly, I find it more difficult now to walk out of the house than I do in
Yes.
staying in the house.
Oh, yeah, I can relate to that. I mean, I seldom go out of the house at the moment. I'm in the vulnerable group, so I get an amazing amount of anxiety going to a supermarket. You know, it's something you wouldn't consider existed a year ago. So and a lot of people are in the same boat, and I understand it's difficult for a lot of people. So it's fine to feel anxious about just going outside at the moment. It's
Yeah, you
not
know what, you're
unreasonable.
absolutely right. It's really important that you feel that it's fine and that you find your new norm. You know, a lot of people kind of went through the phase of coming out of the first lockdown as if it was back to normal. There's no longer a back to normal. We have to now find a new normality in our lives. And if that means that we have to embrace family more, we have to embrace our good friends more, get to know a few more people, but make that little circle tighter, then without necessarily feeling that we have to go and find thousands of people to be our friends, then suddenly we've got much more of a unit of people that we know are going to listen. And that's the important thing. It's not about talking, it's about being able to listen. And you know, you're a great listener. You always, I mean, you talk Cobblers, but you
Thanks very much.
You listen to Cobblers as well. So
That's something I got from my father, Alistair. He used to tell me I was always talking Cobblers, so it just stuck.
yeah, but your father was pretty influential. He also said some very acute things
Oh,
to
he
you,
did.
and I think that that's something that you're passing on to Paul Jr. as well. And I
Thank you.
see in Paul Jr. a really good, well-meaning, caring kid, and I like that of him. And you know, the next generation are going to have to lead, and they're going to have to be caring and listening kids who take that to the future. Our problem well, my generation, you know, I'm 14 years older than you. My generation was all
44.
Sorry?
44.
44 what?
Yeah. 14 years older than me, you're 44.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is great. I put grey in the beard this morning.
It suits you, so I like that. And we've got the same glasses apparently as well, you know. But
yeah, we are twins. You know that.
We are
We are
twins. Separated at birth, Alistair.
I don't know how we
No,
were.
I was the one who was locked in the attic. You went out and went to school, and I was locked in the attic.
So yeah, so you were locked. Why were you locked in the attic?
I ate too much.
From birth, right from the start.
No, carry on, I'm sorry.
No, I was just talking about your dad and how I could see in him and the way that I suppose he was one of the more traditional fathers of his generation.
Yeah.
Who felt that his children should go out to work and earn their crust and all of that stuff.
Yes.
And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. I think sometimes generations are brought up with too much of a simple life. You got to get out there and do it. And I think that's what you do with Paul Jr. You know, you will always be there for him, but you say to him, you know, you've got to find your own way. And
I tell him I love him every time I see him, which is something that my father never did, but he's from a different generation, and they kept their emotions to themselves.
You're absolutely right, and potentially that you recognize that, but I'm not sure that affected you. I think you think of your father fondly, as opposed to anything else. And that's part of who you are now.
Alistair, people have. I've had good and bad times with my father, but when they've gone, you just need to remember the good times. There's no point in dwelling on bad stuff.
Do you know what? You're absolutely right. But at the same time, some of that bad stuff was generational. It was about, how they were treated by their father. And, sometimes you skip a generation in terms of, whether you take after your father or your grandfather or whatever. But interestingly, in a way, we skip generations every 10 years, I think. Tastes in music, if you look at the music industry, and of course, I'm talking to the infamous DJ Pumpkin here.
Oh,
yeah, the infamous, the 15-year-old DJ Pumpkin.
Yeah, it's quite embarrassing, really, but there you go.
No, it's not embarrassing at all. It's part of your history, and I think that's really charming that you used to be a DJ at 15. And you used to chat up all of those girls.
I don't know what you mean, Alistair.
Yeah, you've told me a few stories.
Well, keep it clean.
And actually, we met one, Chantal, didn't we? Which is really lovely.
Talking Cobblers video.
Yeah.
Quite a nice little surprise that was, Alistair.
Yeah, we found Chantal and we brought her back into your life. And I understand you're going to do one of these with her. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm going to bring her on for a chat. Yeah, I mean, we've kept in touch now, so it was a lovely surprise. Just to explain, Chantal's one of my school sweethearts. Alistair managed to track her down and bring her on for the conversation on the Talking Cobblers video. So, yeah, you're a little devil, you're there, Alistair, aren't you? You're bringing that one in.
Yeah, well, you know what? There is that devil in me. I get that from my grandfather.
Do you really?
Not from my father.
While I've got you on, Alistair, and I'm a bit mindful of time, it would be a disservice due to the fact that you've had such a long, distinguished career in photography, not to ask you about the people that you've met during your journey, and if you've got any really interesting anecdotes in relation to famous people you've come across in your lifetime. So could I give you the floor for a moment to tell us about some of your experiences about the people you've come across in your line of work?
Yeah, sure. As you know, I have considered what we all love to call celebrities just as being people. And in a way, that's something which has done me proud with my work, because I've never really gone to them and kind of worshipped who they were for what they did. I just went to them as individuals, and if I liked them, I liked them. If I was lukewarm towards them, I lukewarm. It's like meeting people, isn't it? Sometimes you get on, sometimes you don't. But generally through work, it would be a short little moment with them. And I started by photographing cats, dogs, and tortoises. Like anybody else. I was just given all the rubbish jobs, like the menial photographer who just came out of college and who was trying to find his way. But the very first one that I really kind of hit it was with a group called the Police and Sting, and that was at a time where I remember distinctly there was one guy. He was called John Lees, and he worked for a magazine. And I went in with a set of pictures of a ballerina. And for some reason, I didn't courier the pictures in. I walked in with them. And John looked at them and he suddenly shouted across to Jane Gould, who was the picture editor then, and said, "Let's send Alistair." And I said, "What's all this about then, John?" And he said, "Oh, we're going to send you out to Atlanta to photograph the Police, the group, and Sting." And, and you've got to remember that they were just starting. They were at their kind of heyday. They'd hit America, and they were touring America. So I'm going, right, blimey, this is my big chance. This is a cover suddenly.
Okay.
So I get on the plane, off I go. I turn up. I'm in the hotel lobby. They're they all are. And you know, you got Sting, you got Rutherford, not Rutherford, he's in Genesis, isn't he? Who you got? Andy Summers and Stuart Copeland. And Miles Copeland was their manager.
Okay.
And Miles Copeland walks up to me and he writes on a piece of paper, he said, Sting will talk to you now.
Ooh.
You know, kind of like this little thing. And I'm thinking, okay, well, what's all this about? So we have this chat. And you've got to remember, when you photograph a group, they're all individuals, so they don't hang around together all the time. So you have to find your slot to photograph them as a group, because otherwise they've got girlfriends, families, and they go off and do their own thing. So to physically get them together, you've got to set a time. So I set the time the next morning, and I got the guys from the stage to give me some dry ice, and I did this whole elaborate picture of a Atlanta cab, as if it had smashed into a limousine, and we did the dry ice so it looked like smoke was coming out, and I sat them on it. But that was 20 minutes of photography, and then they all disappeared. And I thought, okay, well, that was a nice shot, but you know, have I got enough? And I was literally due to go that later that day on a flight back to the UK, and I remember about an hour before I was due to leave the hotel, the telephone rings, and it's Miles. And Miles says to me, the guys are all waiting for their equipment because they're going to be in this beautiful little church in the middle of nowhere in Atlanta recording, because the acoustics were really great there. But because the equipment hasn't arrived, they're going to be twiddling their thumbs waiting. Do you want to hang around? You could photograph them. And I thought, yeah, absolutely. So I got on the phone, changed my flight, didn't tell the magazine. And then I spent the next day and a half with the group. And the reason for that story is because it was nothing to do in a way with my photography, because Miles didn't really know my photography.
No.
It was all to do with me engaging with him in a way that he thought, this is a young kid photographer. He's all right. I like him. I'm going to give him a ring, and I'm going to ask him if he wants to hang around. He didn't have to do that. And if he hadn't done that, I might have come back with that one little set of pictures, and it might have been all right, but it may not have been, you know, the 25 rolls of film of each of them individually, of them in different settings as a group, in these fantastic Atlanta scenes. And suddenly I get back, and the trust that they'd given in me to go off to do this shoot was rewarded. And I suddenly became the cover photographer. So every time they then sent me out, it would always be for the big ones. So, you know, in that one little transition moment of that one phone call from Miles, it could have been completely different. I could have come back and they could have said, okay, well, he did all right, but we'll you know, he can go and do the Turkish fan Cat next week up in Newcastle.
It shows how you come across as an individual, Alistair, because Miles saw in you what I saw in you when I first started talking to you.
Well, yeah, in a way, and that's what's important in a way. It's about understanding who, you know, I've often said that I've probably become a better amateur psychologist and photographer. You know, I don't like this. I don't like cameras. I hate the technology of it.
Yeah.
And the fact that I have to do that means that I put something in front of me talking to you. So it's a barrier. So what I do all the time is I hardly ever have my camera in my hand. So I'm talking to someone. So the photography ends up being very quick.
And if you change that relationship, so you're not taking pictures of a stranger.
Yeah.
If they know you, then it's more comfortable, and you're more likely to get their true character out of the pictures.
Well, in a way, yes, but in a way, no, because remember that a lot of the times they have certain image to portray.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah.
So
especially,
you know,
especially with pop groups.
Pop groups, actors, all sorts of people. They want to portray themselves in a kind of a cover image. Or
I was kind of hoping you had a really great anecdote about my mate Morrissey, but you don't, do you, really? He was kind of...
Well, I mean, funnily enough, your mate Morrissey, I mean, actually, do you want to see the picture? I've got it right here. Well, first of all, that just as an anticipation, I happen to have, this is one I prepared earlier. Hang on. Who's that then?
That's Sting, isn't it?
That's our Sting, isn't it?
That's
there you go.
Me reflected in Sting.
There you go. I'm looking around. There you go. How about that?
That's fantastic.
That's Sting. And then...
And he had his best jumper on that day as well.
Yeah, I thought today, as you know, for my chats, I always change this picture.
You did.
But I left Dee Bridgewater, but I put George Harrison up as a musician. I wasn't going to, but then this is the one that we refer to.
I love that picture.
This is the gorgeous Morrissey. Let's do that so you can see it.
Yep, that's fantastic.
Now I mean, I can't remember much about the shoot, and potentially. Probably I was one of those kids in those days who would say, all right, Morrissey. Okay, yeah, Morrissey. Yeah. Who's Morrissey? And then I go off and I photograph him, not really knowing much about his music or whatever, because actually I don't want to be influenced by that. I want to just find something in their face and how they are in the space, in the moment with me. And so I can't remember much, other than the fact that he's a bloody good-looking boy, and he's aged pretty well. But you introduced me then by mentioning Morrissey and Julie Hamill and the Moz Army.
Yeah.
And I started to listen to his music during COVID, and suddenly got into him.
Well,
so I've got to thank you. I'm not sure I'm going to thank you for at least 50 Moz Army people coming to Time to Pause.
Sorry about that.
Each of them with their Morrissey T-shirts and their Morrissey tattoos and their Morrissey all over their face.
Look at the old project. There might be a bit of a running theme here.
No, I know, but we do love Morrissey now. I'm into Morrissey, probably more so than you now.
You've still not got me his autograph, Alistair, so you failed on that one.
Listen, I'm still trying.
You've got to butter him up for me.
Well, interestingly, that's the other thing I found out about him is his reclusiveness, and he doesn't do very much.
He goes out less than he does.
But that's like, bees to honey for me. The minute someone says you can't do it, he'll never do it.
Alistair, you'll never get Morrissey's autograph for me. You won't ever get him writing, to Paul, lots of love from Morrissey, ever.
Okay, fine. You've now just given me my challenge.
Well,
and you know that.
I just, poof. It is my man. I'm sorry.
You'd have to insure it, because all the
I would have to insure it.
Army, all the Moz Army who are listening to this.
Yeah, they'll be clamoring for it.
What I want to do is to get him to come back and to arrange a photo shoot at the Star and Garter.
Yeah. No, what you can do? Yeah.
When the Moz Army are there, so that it can be like.
Oh, that would just be mental.
So let's have a challenge. All right, shall we fulfill it or not?
Well, that's a hell of a challenge. I'd be well impressed if you managed to pull that rabbit out of the hat.
I tell you what. I think that someone like Morrissey, for all of his sort of reclusiveness and all of that stuff that goes with it, he must be totally and utterly aware of the responsibility that he has, in a way, to all of you guys and the love of Morrissey. I mean, I know that you were introduced to Morrissey at a really bad time in your life, weren't you?
Terrible time. I'd just come off the back of being arrested. I've been led out of a company in handcuffs, and a friend of mine suggested, when I was talking suicidal at the time, and a friend of mine jokingly said, if you're going to kill yourself, go and buy the Smiths album. And so I took it literally, went out and bought the Smiths, the best of the Smiths, and sat in the bath listening through the album and crying. I can remember crying, and it was really poignant. And, you know, the songs was telling the story of my life. And I mean, one of those songs is up there on the wall, That Joke Isn't Funny Anymore. It was, said it all.
But then that's exactly how your life pattern has changed, hasn't it? Because the whole thing about your arrest, feeling so down, so bad, the whole thing about you then saying, what's the point? And then a mate will say to you, I tell you what, why don't you go and listen to Morrissey then? You know, which is kind of the traditional thing. Well, Morrissey's always so depressing, which is not true at all once you really start to listen to his lyrics and stuff. And so you then took that literally, and just by listening, it changed your emphasis.
Songs that saved my life.
Songs that saved your life. And you know what? Ultimately, that's a big responsibility on the people who write those songs.
Yeah.
And the very fact that you emotionally feel that way about someone's music and their work, they should really understand that you're not just a fan because of being a fan. You're a fan because it's changed your life.
Absolutely.
And that's hugely important.
I mean, now I'm part of the Moz Army family, and all these amazing individuals have all got one common thread, but we're all different people, but we all share the same love. And
you know what? Absolutely. And you share the same love for one person, but also for his music, for his lyrics. And now you share the same love for each other. So, you know, in listening, you're caring for others, and that's really important.
And which is why you'll have to come to the Moz Army meet one year, Alistair, to bring your camera.
Yeah, definitely.
You'd love it. I mean, there's some great photos to be had there, because it's so, well, it's the old settings, it's like Victorian, and even the bus ride and the buildings and the surrounding area, there's a lot of history. So it'd be fantastic for you to take pictures.
Yeah. No, brilliant. And it's supposed to be next April, isn't it, or something?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's see how we do with COVID then, because I know that Julie is slightly worried that it's not going to happen.
Well, no, but we'll have to play it by ear, see how we go. But I said, once again, mindful of time, Alistair, I want to just ask you, what's next for Alistair Morrison? I mean...
Well, what's next is probably breakfast.
I don't mean particularly this morning. I mean, I know you've got... Is it a film festival?
I'm being flippant, mate. I'm being flippant.
Well, please be flippant. It's funnier that way.
What next will be that I will remain in this chair for Time to Pause for a while longer, simply because I think it's important. You know, that thing about showing a responsibility in what you do. I think it's important that during this time and doing my work during COVID, that I continue meeting more people and introducing them to each other. I met them. I like the idea now of them meeting each other through my conversations. So the Time to Pause conversations will continue. You know, on hold, simply because I can't be in the same room with someone, is my photography. The photography that I've created out of Time to Pause exists, and I'll still do some of that. But, you know, ultimately, there's nothing better than being in the same room with people and to be able to photograph them. And that's, you know, that's one thing that I'm really looking forward to with you, Paul, is that one day we'll be in the same room. Yeah. And apart from that big crushing hug that you've promised me.
Oh, you're getting that one.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna snog you, mate. So
well, you can do. No tongues. No tongues.
No, none of that. None of that.
No.
You know, that's too friendly, isn't it?
Well, before we do go, I mean, I'm trying to get a common theme through the videos, which is I'd like you to just say hello to my mum. if that's all right, Alistair.
The lovely Anne. I
Yeah.
think your mum's delicious. And you know what I loved about you, Paul, and your mum was that every Monday you used to, before COVID, you used to take her to the market, didn't you?
Yeah.
And that used to be your day out with your mum.
Yeah.
And I thought that that was really lovely. And, you know, that should be top of your goal list, is to get out there with mum as often as you can. I know that you speak to her. I know that she tells you off all the time, and she's, you know, kind of, as mums do.
Correct.
You're still a little boy. You're still her little boy.
Yeah, that's right, I am.
But the biggest hug to Anne, who I think is totally responsible for you, Paul, and that's the best I can possibly say for Anne, is that your mum is a good one, just as you are.
No, thank you very much, Alistair. I really appreciate that. Well,
I love the fact that every time we get to that moment, the drilling starts.
Oh, can you hear it?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the Nottingham Federation of Builders have decided to have their annual drilling festival outside the front of my house just this morning. So they must have known you was coming on, Alistair.
Fantastic.
Oh, you couldn't make it up, could you, basically?
Listen, I think we better explain that noise in the background. Otherwise, you know.
Well, they may think I've got some other tools firing off around here, but it is nothing to do with me, Alistair. So I apologise about the background noise there.
No, it's only happened twice, but in pauses. So they're very good at waiting.
We are, though. I'm going to have a word with them, thank them for it shortly.
Listen, Paul, I think that I've really enjoyed this. These chats are really great.
We need to do this again, Alistair. I mean, I'll tell you one thing. We've been talking for quite a while, and there's so much more stuff I could talk to you about.
Well, let's do it again. I mean, we're chatting all the time. This is no different to our chats, is it really?
No.
So, you know, you just have to record it.
We'll have to Alistair Morrison Part 2 at some point.
Yeah, let's do that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Just a big thank you, Alistair, for talking to me, and thank you for sharing all of that with us.
That's all right.
Like I say, for everyone that's watching, just like I said, once again, massive thank you. Thank you for tuning in, and thanks for your contribution, Alistair. And thank you for the Nottingham Federation of Builders as well.
I love that ending.
Well,
hang on, let's just see. No, hang on. Let's just see if we can just.
That's the marvelous.
Pause. Perfect. Time to pause.
Silent.
There you go. Silent.
Well, I really enjoyed that conversation with Alistair Morrison. I hope you guys did too. And all I need to say now is, if you would please, would be kind enough to press the like button, maybe leave a comment, and press the subscribe button, and I'd be really, really appreciative. So thank you for watching. I'll catch you in edition 3. Bye-bye for now.